Hello, Principal Matters listeners. I am Dr. Jen Schwanke, and I am here, of course, with my co host, William D. Parker. And William has a wonderful interview coming up next with Bobby Dodd. So you won't want to miss that. But Will and I decided we wanted to do a better job of answering some of the the multiple listener questions that come in. And so we're going to take just about 5 minutes today, opening the show to reflect on a question. So you ready, Will?
Yeah. So thank you, Jen, for that feedback. And thank you for all the work you've done to be a great part of this podcast. Listeners, go back and listen to the 400 plus episodes if you want to catch up on the context for our show. But we wanted to add this part in just to give you a chance to hear from both of us as we interview a guest today, too. But here's the question, Jen.
Yeah. So here's the question. And Will, you have to answer first.
Oh, I get to go first.
Okay.
Okay.
You get to go
So
first.
so this person wrote, reflection on my own leadership strengths and weaknesses, colon, how do they correlate with my current team? Additional ways to grow as a leader. So let me set some context because this question I actually gathered in a training I was doing with assistant principals, and I asked them as an exit ticket to write a question on a post-it note. So this was exactly how it was written on the post-it note. So to give you some context, in that training, we were talking about what are the different hats we wear as leaders, and how do we identify the areas where we have strengths but where we need to grow. And so this person's asking, how do I correlate my own strengths and weaknesses with my team? So how can I be growing as a leader but also fit in my strengths and weaknesses with the team I have? And so here's my response. um, I'm so grateful that leaders recognize the importance of correlating with their teams, because so many new principals, especially I talk to, feel like they have to be a Superman or Superwoman and just do it all.
Mhm.
And so the answer to the first thing I would say to you is congratulations for recognizing your need to exercise your strengths, but also find the strengths that others have. Um, Figuring out how to correlate that takes time because you have to get to know your people, and it takes a long time to get to know people. I was talking to a principal the other day who has a very large staff with 100 plus teachers. One of his goals going into this year is he's breaking up that staff among himself and his APs, and they are actually keeping notes on how much time they're spending getting to know each teacher so that each of them is able to say, this teacher or these groups of teachers trust me. It's because they're actually targeting their teachers like a teacher would target their students. So I would just say to this leader, be intentional to get to know your team members personally and professionally. And over that time, you begin to identify their strengths and be able to see this is the best place to plug this person and this person. It doesn't happen overnight, but recognizing those skill sets and looking for those strengths and then matching strengths with actions can be a good place to start.
Right. I love that answer. And I think I join you in applauding whoever can look at their own strengths and weaknesses and see how they fit in. It is a puzzle, right? To have a really strong team that's in flow, you have to recognize that you need other people. And I think step one is to actually truly think about your own strengths and weaknesses. What do you have that you're really, really good at? What is it that you hate to do or you don't do well? And that can be really tricky, right? Because a lot of times principals think they have to be good at everything and they feel like a failure if they're not. So having that honest view of your own work and then being willing to put the ego or the pride or whatever aside in order to let other people shine, that's part of creating a good team and looking for that correlation as the question kind of asks. So I think when I think about how principals build strong teams and lift up others, part of that is being accurate in your assessment of other people's strengths and weaknesses. You can ask them, you can say, hey, what do you bring to this team? What do you like doing? What is something that you really do find is impactful? And then watching, as you said, getting to know those people and seeing if that's accurate and if you're using those people well and appropriately in shared leadership. So, as you said, it's a process, right? It takes time and it takes patience. It also takes a willingness to let people change and have their strengths and weaknesses evolve over time.
So, Jen, as we wrap up, I do want to point listeners to a great resource called the Teacher's Principle. by Dr. Jen Schwanke.
Wait,
Because
that's
it's
me.
yeah, because it's a great book if you're looking for a resource on how to identify and
Mhm.
build those strengths and to be the kind of principal that a teacher would want to have as a leader. So Jen, thank you for that. And I'm excited for listeners to be able to get to listen to episode 410 with Bobby Dodd. So thank you guys. And
Thanks,
until next
everyone.
time, thanks for doing what matters.
Thank you.
Principal Matters Podcast, episode 410. Hi, friends. This is Will Parker, host of Principal Matters, the School Leaders Podcast, where each week we bring you inspiring, innovative, and imaginative ideas for your own school leadership. And this week, we're going to be talking about innovation in leadership with my special guest, Bobby Dodd. Bobby Dodd is the principal of William Mason High School, Ohio's largest high school. And with 4 degrees, Bobby has found his true calling in dedicating his life to helping others. His commitment to innovation has led to the creation of numerous opportunities at Mason High School, including digital academies, college summer camps, fabrication labs, early college high school programs, modified block schedules, and personalized learning environments. Bobby's not just an educator, he is a leader who actively engages with the community to advance the field of education. He was recognized as the 2016 NASSP Digital Principal of the Year and was a finalist for the 2017 Varsity Brand Principal Award. Beyond his school, Bobby contributes to education by presenting at conferences nationwide, co-moderating OH Ed Chat, co-founding Ed Camp Leader Ohio, and coaching future leaders with Jay Casas and Associates. Bobby Dodd, welcome to Principal Matters Podcast. Why don't you fill in the gaps on that intro and tell listeners something else they may be surprised to know about you?
Yeah, thanks, Will. It's great to be here. I always enjoy talking with you. I'd say I think about it. One thing people don't know about me is I also have a law degree. So before I got into the school education field, I practiced got in the law game a little bit. So I was in that, and then I was looking for something different in life, transitioned over to education. Probably another thing is I know my daughters think it's kind of weird, but my music taste, it expands everything. And so I was thinking the other day, and I was with some friends, and I told them how I'm a big Miley Cyrus fan. And so I like a lot of her new work and things like that. Some people will be like, wow, really? I'm like, yeah, well, I don't know, just like her voice, like her music. And so now that she's a Grammy winner, I guess there's a little clout behind that too. But yeah, that's probably my biggest thing is my musical taste kind of go all over the place.
Oh, I love that, Bobby. And you're an eclectic person, and I'm gonna come back to your own story here in just a minute. But tell us some about your school before we jump into some of the things I want to talk about in terms of your story and in leadership. What are some of the student and teacher outcomes that you're most proud of?
Yeah, Mason High School, it's like you said, we're the biggest high school in the state. So we're 3,600 students. Very proud of just our student and staff voice. So we really focus on our students being involved in a lot of our committees where I think traditionally at schools it would be maybe just administrators or maybe administrators and teachers. We get our students involved in a lot of those areas. One big thing we'll be coming up with soon is interviews. And so we have our students have their own section for every position that we have here, whether we're hiring a coach or whether we're hiring a teacher. Our students are involved in the process and have a huge voice in that. And going back to our staff voice, we last few years we've really tried to dedicate a lot of our time to letting our staff share things that they can help us improve the building in the district. And so we are very proud of that because I try to tell people that our administrative team is very strong. I've been doing this a little bit a while myself, but we really need to get the staff involved and have them help us. And that means all our staff. I'm not just talking about teachers. We utilize all our staff and get their voice to help us improve here at Mason High School. So I think those are kind of the biggest things. Probably one other thing is maybe our focus on mental health and well-being here in our district. It's really not like any other place. So we partner with Cincinnati Children's Hospital. We have therapists on site each day for our students to meet with. It is really a focus of ours, and we've really seen huge dividends from it as well. And I'm extremely proud of that. My own family, my own daughter is able to take advantage of those of the benefits that we have here. We have a nationally recognized Hope Squad, peer to peer counseling for kids. That we are one of the first schools in the country to have that. Now it's going to be a national organization here soon that the many states around the country are going to be following. So a lot of great things going on here at Mason High School that go well beyond me, and it doesn't really have anything to do with me. It's just a lot of the great people that we have here at Mason.
I love that. You and I met through our mutual friendship with Jimmy Costas, and gosh, it was the summer of 2023. We met in Denver,
Yeah,
Colorado at the NASSP National Conference and enjoyed dinner together. And I just so admire the way that I admire the way, Bobby, that you have that you uniquely lead with the fingerprints that you leave on your leadership are uniquely Bobby Dodd. I just have to say it that way. You're authentically yourself while being in the positions that you hold. And I say that because I want you to talk a little bit with listeners about how your own story has motivated the work you do as an education leader, because your story is unique and not necessarily what I would call traditional.
yeah, I would agree with you, Will. I think it goes back to really probably my parents. And so my dad was a very laid back person, very patient. And so people have always said that about me, but people say things about you like that. You never really think of yourself that way. I didn't know I was a patient person, but that goes right into leadership. And so having those characteristics, having a family that really focused on patience and being open minded, really before, the growth mindset even anybody even knew what that was. Having that growing up has been huge for me in my leadership up till this day. Another thing is I think about that. I've always been a storyteller. So even when I was a kid, I think people came to me or I told stories, and this as well as being a leader, you got to be able to be a great storyteller and be able to motivate people and keep people engaged and just know all about that. Whether you're talking to your staff, talking to families, or presenting at conferences, I think that's just something that I don't know. Growing up, it was just something that came natural to me. And then systems oriented, I've always been I think my family may disagree with this, but I've always been a detail oriented person. And I've just utilized systems all throughout my years and being a teacher and being a principal. And so, like, one of the things that anybody knows me, they know I'm a big fan of Tool Time for Education by David Langford, and it's really a guide to show you how to work through problems and solutions. And so every place I've been, I've bought that for teachers and bought it for leaders, and we use it. We've taught kids how to work through that process, and so I've always focused on systems, and I think it's again part of my just growing up in my family and my parents. My mom was a teacher, my dad was an attorney for years, and I think they utilize systems and I didn't even know it, right? You don't even know it sometimes when you're a kid or growing up, but they did that. And so that's how I grew up. That's how my brothers and sisters and I grew up. And I just took it right into leadership. And like I said, I think it's helped me and it's created a unique story for me because, as I said, I didn't get right into education. I was something that I didn't think I would want to do. My mom was a teacher and I would see how hard she worked and things. And so then my wife got into it, and then we had a situation in the little town where he grew up in where they asked me, "Hey, you ever thought of teaching?" I'm like, well, I'll give it a shot. And then I did it, and then it just kind of you look as a teacher and you think like, well, maybe I could be an administrator, maybe I can help more people that way. And that's exactly how I thought. And then it's gotten me to here to Mason. So my family and I talk about it all the time how just gratitude and happiness has got us to this point in kind of the things that we do and we believe in as a family. It really is kind of mind blowing where I am today.
Well, I'm going to stay here for a minute, Bobby, because there's something that I alluded to in your intro that is intriguing to me, and that is that you've really dedicated your life to helping others. And so I'm just really curious, how would someone who decided to earn a law degree go from that trajectory to where you are now?
Well, it's I don't know how much time we have, but it's kind of sitting in and I think I reflect a lot. And, and I think my wife would agree with me and my kids would agree with me. And so I reflect and I try to envision myself people ask me like, what will you do 5 years from now? Where are you going to be 5, 10 years? I don't really think of it that way. I think what I'm doing now, do I see myself doing this in 5 years? Do I see myself doing this in 10 years? And so at that point, I really struggled as a student. Everybody that knows me, I have the degrees hanging behind me, but I'm one of those people that I was not a good student. I usually started off on academic probation, then I could end up on the dean's list. But that struggle kind of made me think like, well, am I going to be good at this? Do I see myself doing this 10, 15, 20 years? And then that opportunity came to teach, and I'm like, hey, you know something? Let's give it a shot. Because I don't think of things of like, well, if you're going to do this, you better be able to do it in 30 years. I think of it as like, I'll see, can I do this in 5 years? Yeah, if I can, then I'll keep doing it. If not, then I'll try to find something else. One thing Jimmy always says is Jimmy's like, remember, you're a marketable person. So if you step out and try to do something different, remember, you have a lot of experiences and background that somebody else will want eventually. And so I guess I kind of thought about that before I even met Jimmy. I kind of thought of myself that way. And to get to that point where I was with that law degree and then got into teaching, I just thought there was something else out there for me that I may enjoy longer and I could help people more.
So you're one of those people that instead of trying to map out where you're going to be in 5 or 10 years, you look at where you are and ask, do I like where I'm at? And if I like where I'm at, can I see myself continuing to do this long term? And if I don't like where I'm at, how can I find a place where I like where I'm at? And I'm putting words in your mouth, but I'm pulling this from what I've heard you say about yourself, where you decided you like where you are is where you can be helping people. And as a leader, Bobby, you've helped a lot of people. And I know because you and I share similar timelines in terms of how long we've been in education, that you've done a lot of different things in education. But I want to talk about how, because I could take this conversation so many different directions, but I want to talk about how, as a leader of innovation, because you've been recognized for that work, how and you alluded to this earlier, how your commitment to systems has helped you as an innovative leader. So could you talk for a little bit about how building systems has helped you support the outcomes you've seen with your schools?
Yeah, so I really think back to what I mentioned earlier is we when we look at innovation, a lot of times we encounter problems or we encounter things that could be improved or things that could be better. And so if you work through a process of, okay, we have this, now what's the next step we're going to take? Well, do we have the right people in the room? Do we have the right feedback? Once we get the feedback and we get the right people in the room, how are we going through that process of figuring out, okay, what are we going to work on? How are we going to solve this problem? What are the top two things? What are some of the solutions? What's the practicality of completing this solution? And then how long is it going to take us? So I work through all those type of steps or protocols, some people like to call them, and that has helped me throughout the years really deal with any type of thing, whether it's innovation or other things that we encounter as leaders in a school building. And so that training I said I received, that was when I was first year as a principal. I received the training multiple times. I've just used it because at first when I learned about it, I'm like, well, I don't know how I'm going to use this. And then one day it just started to click. And I don't think when you go to get your admin license and you take the classes, it's not one of the things they really teach you. They don't teach you, well, you're going to encounter these different problems or different ways to innovate throughout the day, throughout the weeks and months. How are you going to utilize a system or how are you going to approach that? And so I started seeing success when we were utilizing these different systems and you can get feedback from everybody. But the best part was everyone would see, oh, he has a system for this, or, oh, we're going to use this system. I think you get more people buying in. I don't like using that term, but it's more like people believing and people saying, let's follow the system and let's see what happens at the end. So to me, like innovation, but I use it with a lot of different things. The systems oriented approach has, it's probably got me where I am today, to be honest with you.
Let's take a moment to thank our sponsors, and then we'll be right back. Why is IXL used in 95 of the top 100 U.S. school districts? Because it works. Research across 45 states showed that IXL schools outperform other schools on state tests. With IXL, you get a personalized online learning and teaching solution that helps you improve achievement, empower teachers, track progress, and more. This one platform for K-12 helps teachers accomplish what normally would require dozens of other tools. For example, as students practice skills, IXL automatically adapts to ensure each learner is always supported and challenged at the right level. IXL also provides every student with a personalized learning plan to help them close knowledge gaps effectively. One of my favorite things about IXL is their personalized test prep tool. For exams like the SAT and ACT, IXL will analyze a student's most recent score and generate a custom list of skills to help them boost their scores. If you want to take the load off of your teachers so they can do their best work, IXL can help. Learn more at IXL.com/PM today. I want you to mention that source that you talked about earlier with
David Langford. Yeah. So it's Tool Time for Education. He sells it. It's online. I don't work for him at all or anything, but it's been such a huge boost for me. And it's really is a guide, and he follows the plan, do, study, act process. And I share it with people all the time because it has so many protocols. I think sometimes we struggle as leaders. You say, well, we have to have a meeting. And then you get people in a meeting, and then they're like, well, what am I going to do? Well, these are all protocols that you can use. And then even if you're not going to use that, it still gives you a way to think and say, okay, well, then maybe we can set the meeting up this way. So it's the most productive, effective, efficient way to have a meeting and saving everybody's time, but then yet helping us get to point A to point B. So, like I said, I've used that, and it's just been huge for me, and I hope others' development as well.
So take us behind the scenes, and you've been using the systems approach in the way that you guys have built so many amazing outcomes for your school, in terms of programming, but also the way you guys develop input from students, input from staff, input from teachers. I love it that you guys include your own students on even the interview processes that you're, so you recognize the importance of embedding those systems with your people. But Bobby, I've had the privilege of talking to you off the air too. You use these same systems approaches to evaluate your own leadership. So can you talk a little bit about how you've used that systems approach when it comes to the way you evaluate your own leadership growth and development?
Yeah, so a great example is I share the 15-minute meetings with a lot of people, and I've talked with others about this, and this isn't something that I came up with, but just for my own leadership development, this is a great example. Is I'm not perfect. And when I came to Mason and some of my other previous places, I struggle a little bit with getting to know people in the not getting to know them, but going deeper and getting to know people at a level that you have to in order to let them know that they know you care about them and that you're hearing them and that you're listening to them, because we need to have our staff in a place where they're in a great spot, because then our kids can be in a great spot. And so I utilize these 15-minute meetings. I tell people it's the greatest thing I ever did in my career. And it's really meeting with staff, having 3 or 4 questions, putting it on a Calendly, and then they go and schedule the meetings with me based on my schedule. And they answer the questions, but I get to learn a little bit more about them, their family, all kinds of things, where they went in the summer, where they're vacationing in the winter, but really utilizing the 3 or 4 questions to help our building get better and to let them know that, okay, there's a problem in one of the pods with the flooring. Let's get that fixed so we don't have someone trip over that and hurt themselves. Little things can lead to big things. And so I utilize those 15-minute meetings, and some people ask, like, what do you mean you meet with people? I say, I meet with everybody. So it's everybody in the building. We meet, we talk, and we figure out a way to meet. And my schedule's got to change a lot, but I have found so much reward from that. And it's helped our culture. It's helped the people I work with, my team. I think they see that and they realize the importance of it as well. And our teachers see it, our nutrition staff sees, our custodial staff, our paraprofessionals. So I think utilizing those systems, that's just a small example of, creating that system, but saying we're going to do this. And then, by quarter, you meet with people. It really, you need to put that time in order to get back what you need to have a great culture in your building. I think another thing I think about is my time management. I wasn't real good at that when I first started. As I said, I'm not perfect. And so I put a lot of time in that may have taken away from family. But once you start doing this a little bit longer, you incorporate systems of maybe I have to get up a half hour earlier in order to be in here at a time where I can sit, maybe read, meditate, journal, reflect, get some things done before the phone starts ringing, emails come in, people come in. So I think that's all part of systems as well. You have to dedicate your time to that. It's like my personal growth. Same thing. Like I got to dedicate time to listen to podcasts. I got to dedicate time to read, to network with people. It's all those things. It ends up being a system of like, hey, on Saturday morning, I'm going to do this. Or Monday morning, I get up at this time, I get ready, I go do this in order to prepare for the day. So I think systems have really helped me, not only with my leadership here in the building, but I think personally as well.
Oh, I love that, Bobby. Thanks for those amazing tips. And I'm already sitting here thinking, if I'm a listener and I want to know, how could I pull off my own 15-minute meetings? What are some of those questions that you include in those 3 or 4 that you try to touch on when you're sitting down for 15 minutes with a staff member?
Yeah, that's a good question. So anybody could really search, and there's tons of questions out there. But I think like a good example to start the year off, what did you do this summer? Where did you go? And then maybe the next question is, what's one good thing that's going on at Mason High School we should continue to do? Maybe the next question is, if we were going to improve one thing, or if you were principal for the day, what would you do? Or if you were principal in this building, what would you do to improve things? And then I always like this one, especially to start the year off. And you could do really this one anytime, but we ask, has somebody helped you recently? If they have, how, so I can reach out to them. And so you'll get your staff share all kinds of people's names, and then my team and I can go and either send them emails or write them personal notes thanking them for helping us to start and have a successful start. So those, there's only 3 or 4 questions, but really, man, if you do it, you can really change culture pretty fast.
Oh, those are golden. Now, because you and I have talked about this off the air, Bobby, I want to ask you this question too. You and I both know in educational leadership, there's all kinds of national standards around the qualities necessary for a school leader to be effective in their student outcomes. And when I study those, they're research-based and they're true, but frankly, they're overwhelming when I look at those lists. So talk a little bit about how you've taken some of those standards and created a way to gauge your own growth, because I think you've got some pretty cool tools for doing that.
Yeah, so I agree with you. I remember as a young administrator and I would read those standards. I'm like, so I'm supposed to do all these things, and everything starts spinning. So a few years ago, I sat down and I was like, what has helped me be successful? Because I get people that ask a lot, like, can you help me? Or how did you do this? Or so I kind of really broke it down to 4 areas. It was like focus on the knowledge or the growth. So when I'm looking at something, I'm like, well, I need to be a better communicator. How can I be a better communicator? And then I next one's like applying solutions and modeling for others. And then maybe it's like, well, I know, man, somebody in my network said this book is really good for learning about communications. Or I know this podcast, they said they use this when they communicate with their staff or with families. So that would be applying the solution. So trying that. So learning how to use Smore, or learning how to use YouTube to make videos, or learning how to screencast so I can create things and share them with families and kids. Then the data analysis. And then I look at things like, well, I used to collect data, and then that's how I was just not going to make a newsletter up, learn how to use it, and then tell everybody, well, I'm sending newsletters. Well, if no one's reading it, then you're really not doing anything. You're not making any growth. So the data analysis, and that's something I've really picked up on the last few years, because I think it's coming a big push now in districts of having stakeholders, students, staff, parents, community members take surveys to see where the building is, where the district is. So really diving into that. And I use something again from from David Lanker's tool. It's called operational definition. So when I see a question and I see a response back, I'll ask another question of, okay, you say instructional leadership needs to improve. Tell me what you mean by instructional leadership. And then I would use protocols to maybe get all my staff together, get a group of students together, and have them tell me, what does instructional leadership mean to them? Because to me, it means one thing, but to them can mean something completely different. So I utilize that, and that's part of that data analysis. And then at the end, take time to reflect and say, okay, where am I currently? Where do I want to be? Where can I get to be? What went well? What didn't go well? So really those 4 steps, I utilize those whether I'm looking at myself or looking at coaching, because I just thought, how did I get to be where I was? I can't just go and tell people, well, go read this book. Well, it's one thing to read the book, or it's one thing to listen to a podcast, but how do you use that information that you're taking away from it to help you become a better leader?
Wow. Okay. So I'm going to try to summarize that, Bobby, but fill in the gaps for me, because I think what I heard you say is that you take all of those big standards and you just try to ask some really simple questions, which is, how am I communicating and being heard? How am I applying solutions? How am I really analyzing my data? And how am I conducting operational definitions? Am I on the right
Yeah,
page
and
with you?
then reflect at the end. But yeah,
Okay.
so like if you look at like a rubric that I have, and I take all the PSEL standards, I take those big standards and I put them in the rubric, like, oh yeah, you're hitting this standard. Now I may not read what it exactly says in the standard, but you will hit that if you do these things. Like if you listen to this podcast and then do this, or if you read this book and then do this, or if you try this method, then do this, you are hitting the standard. I just try to write it in a way that I think leaders can understand. Nothing against the standards the way they're written, but you and I both know, Will, like uh, being a principal, if you've never been one before, being a superintendent or being a teacher leader, it's just different once you're in there than it is to say, well, here's a list of standards, go do it. Well, not everybody has that time, right? Like we have the time here that we work, then we have our personal time. And so, how are you balancing all those things? I just tried to break it down in a way that worked for me and that I hope could work for others.
Well, I'm going to share your contact information at the end, Bobby, because you've let me see that rubric and it's powerful. And so, listeners, if that's something that you would love to connect with Bobby about and just be able to look at that as a model, it's just such a great way so you have a tool for reflecting on your own leadership. And Bobby, in my work, I try to boil those standards down to, I call them hats. Here's the hats that leaders have to wear on occasion, because you don't just wear one hat. You're wearing multiple hats every single day in every situation. And those different standards are really often different roles that you're operating. But I love it that you encourage leaders to do what we ask teachers and students to do, which is, if you're not reflecting on how am I actually doing on those roles, then you're probably not, I'm going to say it this way. If you're not reflecting, you're probably not growing, because I don't know how you can grow. I don't know how you can improve if you're not actually taking time to stop and reflect on how am I actually doing in each of those areas that I know are my responsibilities.
Yeah, I mean, I think I have it broken down to about 14 themes, which I call them, like you're talking about hats. And I don't tell people, like, well, let's jump into every one of them. No, let's not do that. Like, once you figure out a couple of the themes and then work through the process, which I have it broken down into 4 quarters, which I think of it in a way of, to me, that's more in grasp for a principal, right? I think sometimes we say, like, we'll go do these things. Like, no, tell me quarter by quarter what we're going to do. I think 9 week stretches, just at least for me, because everything goes so fast and being a principal, I think if you break things down, and I look at it that way, so we try to tackle themes, just maybe a couple, right? Let's just tackle a couple, see how we do, see the growth. Then I think what that does is it can spur a lot of creativity, it can spur success, and I think it really helps with confidence. And that's really what, a lot of times when principals are struggling, they're lacking the confidence that they need.
Mm. Okay. I know you and I are also talking in really bird's eye view perspectives of the work of a school leader. Let's talk right now to that newer leader who's stepping into this work for the first time, Bobby, and I like to ask this question this way. You let's say you have an hour or 30 minutes to have coffee with a young leader, and he or she's just asking you, help me begin. What are the most important priorities that I can hold on to as I'm stepping into this work? So go there for a couple of minutes if you don't mind.
Yeah, I think it'd be important, and I really touched on this. It's getting to know the building, getting to know the kids and the staff. And so I was just telling principal the other day, like the 15 minutes. If I was doing it all again, I would come in and that's the first thing I would do. I would have these meetings with people to get to know them so they can get to know me. Another thing, a young leader, as I always tell them, come in, learn about where you are, learn about the environment. A lot of times people, like even like with this position, I'm sure someone will come in and I'll be leaving soon and not everything's broken, right? It's like there's a lot of great things going on in every school around the country. So come in and learn about those things. And then the things that when you're getting your feedback from staff and students, you take those things that need improved and you walk into them very slowly, very methodically, because there's been history behind those things as well, too, right? Like you wouldn't know it because you're new, but there's always going to be a history back there. And I think it's important, very important for young administrators when they're getting into this is how are you going to approach that? Because people are going to be watching how you approach it. And that's why I think the systems approach for me is just really good because then people are like, they're watching, they're seeing that you're grasping this, you're seeing that you have a system in place. Uh, they feel more confident in you. There's just all these little things that I think that usually what I tell young administrators is come in and get to know the staff and the kids and the families and get to know the great things that are going on. But then when because you're going to hear from things like, oh, this needs improved, that needs improved. We'll have a system to do those things, and nobody said you had to do it your first week in the job. It takes time.
So getting to know your people, understanding the history of the school that you're encountering, but then deciding ahead of time that embedding systems for, because we're going full circle back to the beginning of this conversation,
Yeah.
making sure that you have a system in place where you can listen, ask the right questions, look for solutions, identify tasks and goals, set timelines, and then take action so that you're not simply just hearing concerns or addressing challenges, but you're trying to fit them within the framework of what can we actually do about this. And we both know that sometimes people just need spaces to vent. Not everything that someone brings you is going to be a potential solution. But in the process of getting to know your people, you're identifying those things that you're like, okay, this might be a short-term situation that we're going to fix, or this might be a long-term situation. But because you're asking the questions the way you ask them, Bobby, with every one of your staff in 15-minute meetings and getting to know people, you have a comprehensive understanding of the people in your building and where they see the touch points, the pain points, the areas that need improvement. And then that gives you an ongoing list of things that you're going to be working on as you step into a year. As
Yeah,
you
it's
look,
true.
go
And
ahead.
so I think about people really big on 90-day plans or different number of day plans, and I agree it's great. But how many times do you see in those plans people including the system they're going to use for different things of like getting to know the staff or working through problems or innovation or different things like that? It's rare you see that. So I tell younger administrators, like it's okay to have a plan. It's okay to set up a system. I think people look at that more, and there's a lot of respect out there. And systems are really hot right now. It's a the buzzword out there, but I think there's proof in the pudding too. If you have those systems in place, it's going to lead to a lot more success than otherwise.
So I know we're recording this conversation as we wrap up a school year. Listeners won't be hearing this until the beginning of a new semester, which is going to be around August, Bobby. So that's when this show is going to be going live, and you're going to
Yeah.
already have you will already have stepped into a new chapter in your work. So I also wanted to address this because I get a lot of feedback from more experienced listeners, leaders who are like, "Well, I'm thinking about that next thing." So talk to us about, and you're not in that next thing yet. So I know I'm asking you this question maybe prematurely, but I do think this might be helpful for our experienced leaders. What are some of the things, Bobby, you've had a long career and a very successful one, and now you've made the recent announcement that you're going to be stepping into a new chapter in your education journey. Tell us what you're comfortable with telling us about that, but also the question I'd like to point towards is, what are the processes that go through your mind as you think about those next steps? Because I often have leaders reach out to me that are just wrestling with, I think I'm ready to do something different, but I'm not sure how to even begin that process of what to do next.
Yeah, well, okay. First, I love coaching, so I'll probably continue to do that, coaching leaders of all levels. And if that's just something that's on the side, then it's on the side. But I really love doing that. And I'm thankful for Jimmy Costas to get, years ago, got me that opportunity, and it's been great doing that. It's helped my career. And I tell the people I coach with, I learn a lot from them just as much as they get from me. And so it's helped me improve. It's helped our kids here. It's helped our staff here. So that's one thing that I'm going to keep doing. I think when you start talking about that process, I look at it in my family, we view things probably a little bit differently than other people. And so I talked a little bit ago about, how I think about where I am today compared to 15, 20 years ago. And so we look at that as like, we look at our journey as happiness. So some people will say, "Well, what are you, burned out? Are you not happy?" No, I'm very happy. I'm happy with, where my kids are, where my wife is in her career, what our journey in life has been. I'm very happy, and so that people think, well, that's strange, and why you want to go do something else? Because I feel like it's time for me to do something else. I want to jump in and try something else and look at something different. I tell people if I do that and then I end up having to come back, or I end up coming back in education, then I do. Then but I never, I'm not one of those people that will just stay, in a place and say, well, I have to do this because of retirement or because of the salary, because I can't get years other places. I've never operated that way. I don't, no one in my family operates that way. So we're just a little bit different, but we look at that happiness as it's a whole journey. It's not something that's just day by day, because, well, in this position, there's ups and downs. I can be happy 1 hour and the next hour I'm frustrated. That's the nature of this job. And so I think if I was going to tell other people, it's don't worry about it. Some people think it's a risk. I've just always bet on myself, right? And so I think there's a lot of things that we as educators, whether you're a teacher, whether you're working on a nutritional staff, a custodial staff, a principal, an assistant principal, there's all these things that we do each day that a lot of people don't know about. It's finding those things that make you enjoy, and finding those things that other positions have, and then maybe you're like, well, maybe I could go do this or try this, because I just think of it that way. It's I think there's a lot of experiences that I've gained over the years. I think I can help maybe a company, help another district, just a number of things that I think I can do that I've been a principal or a teacher, but well, there's a lot more to it than just that.
I so appreciate that answer, Bobby. And as we wrap up, I just want to say a couple of thoughts. One is that when your journey is happiness, and I like to, when I talk about those values in my work, I like to talk about where am I finding my greatest satisfaction? Because when I wrestled with the transition from principalship to supporting principals full time, first working with my state association, but now in the full-time work I do with Principal Matters, I like to look back at that decision-making period and remind myself that in many ways I was leaving something I loved to do something I would love. And so I think if you're in a place that you don't love the work enough, that it's motivating you, it's a part of your passion, it's a part of your values, you're probably already in the wrong place. But if you're thinking about that next change, it's got to be grounded in, is whatever I'm going to be doing next also going to be something where I'm centered in doing something I love, something that's going to bring me satisfaction. And for us, I know we share a lot of the same values, that's going to be in the way that we can still help and serve other people while finding joy in that process. So thank you for that. How can listeners stay connected with you? And what are any parting words of advice, Bobby, that you might have as we wrap this conversation up?
Well, I think they can stay connected with me on LinkedIn or on Twitter or X and on Instagram. It's just at Bobby and then _Dodd. Somebody got to the first underscore before I did, so it's _. And then if you just search me on LinkedIn, you can find me. But I think some parting words. I just always this is a great leadership is a great thing, whether you're at a company or in a school, and I'm always I use the term blessed a lot, very grateful. Uh, just I think people we lose sight of that sometimes. I think we lose sight of how great working with kids and working with staff members and community members, how great it is and how rewarding it is. So I think people just some gratitude once in a while, maybe if you don't do it each day, maybe just on the weekend or when you get up on Monday mornings. I think it's important to be grateful for what you have. And so I realized other schools are different, districts are different, but when it's all said and done, you get a chance to do something that there's a lot of people out in this world that wish they could have the jobs that we have. And so it's a pretty rewarding experience.
Mm. Well, Bobby Dodd, principal of William Mason High School in the Cincinnati, Ohio area. Thank you so much for doing what matters, and soon to be, by the time this recording comes out, in his next adventure. So keep me updated. I'm so proud of the great work you've done serving your school community. And Principal Matters listeners, I want you to stay connected with Bobby. So we'll put his contact information in the show notes. But as you're thinking about this school year that you're already stepped into, and you're thinking about how do you want to create innovative programs, how do you want to lead a school where you would want your own children to attend, then reach back if you want to connect with any of Bobby's resources on how to build those systems, how to connect with people, how to think deeply about the right questions to ask as you're solving problems. Bobby, thank you for the opportunity. And Principal Matters listeners, thank you for doing what matters. We'll talk to you again next week. You'll find free resources like this one at williamdparker.com. Subscribe for our free weekly newsletter, which contains bonus material, and also check out the links for Grow Academies, Masterminds, Executive Coaching, and Keynote presentations for my books, as well as for Principal Matters Associates. You can find out more under our speakers tab at williamdparker.com. Thank you for learning together, and thank you for doing what matters.